For years, Hollywood operated under a dangerous assumption that audiences would show up no matter what. Studios believed brand loyalty was unbreakable, that nostalgia, franchises, and marketing budgets could overpower any backlash. Somewhere along the way, a shift happened. Instead of focusing on storytelling, entertainment, and escapism, many celebrities began using their platforms to lecture, criticize, and even mock the very audiences that made them famous. Fans were no longer treated as customers, but as obstacles. Anyone who disagreed was labeled outdated, ignorant, or irrelevant. At first, Hollywood didn't see a problem. Social media applause from the loudest voices created the illusion that everyone agreed. But quietly, something else was happening. Ticket sales began slipping. Viewership numbers declined. Entire fan bases checked out without making noise. No protests, no viral outrage, just absence. And that silence was louder than any boycott. The industry mistook criticism for noise, not realizing it was a warning. By the time executives noticed the financial damage, it was already too late. The audience had learned the one language Hollywood understands best: money. And that realization set the stage for a series of career collapses no one expected. Rachel Zegler became the face of a moment that symbolized everything audiences were growing tired of. Cast as Snow White in Disney's live-action remake, she didn't just promote the film, she openly criticized the original. She dismissed the love story, mocked the prince, and suggested the classic tale was outdated and uncomfortable. These weren't private comments pulled out of context. They were delivered confidently, publicly, and repeatedly. To longtime Disney fans, it felt like contempt. Instead of excitement, anticipation turned into resentment. When the movie finally released, the response was brutal. Despite a massive budget reportedly nearing $250 million, the box office return was shockingly low. The gap between cost and revenue became impossible to ignore. And this wasn't an isolated failure. Another film she starred in shortly after performed just as badly, proving the issue wasn't the franchise alone. The narrative shifted quickly. Once positioned as a rising star, she suddenly found herself absent from major studio announcements. No new blockbuster roles, no franchise leads. Instead, she retreated into theater work, far from the scrutiny of mainstream audiences. It wasn't framed as a downfall, but the silence spoke volumes. Hollywood didn't cancel her, it simply stopped calling. Brie Larson's backlash didn't begin with a movie, it began with a sentence. A comment dismissing a large portion of the audience as irrelevant may have seemed minor at the time, but it planted a seed that would grow for years. As the face of Captain Marvel, she wasn't just promoting a character, she became the symbol of a cultural divide. The first film succeeded spectacularly, but timing mattered. It rode the wave of anticipation leading into Avengers Endgame. The sequel didn't have that shield. When it arrived years later, the numbers told a different story. The drop was staggering, hundreds of millions gone. Not slowly lost, but missing. Interviews began to change in tone. Where there was once confidence, there was hesitation. In one moment that went viral, she openly questioned whether audiences even wanted her to continue in the role. That honesty revealed something rare: awareness. In response, her public image softened. She launched a YouTube channel, sharing mundane, relatable content. It was a clear attempt to reconnect, to humanize herself again. But the audience had already moved on. Studios noticed. Future plans quietly disappeared. No third film, no major announcements. Like others before her, she transitioned to theater, respected, quieter, and safely removed from mass audiences. It wasn't punishment, it was containment. When Star Wars entered the conversation, the stakes became impossible to ignore. The franchise isn't just popular, it's generational. Its audience spans decades, cultures, and identities. So when a new series was marketed less as a story and more as a statement, tension was inevitable. The creator openly framed the project around modern ideological messaging, positioning it as a reinvention rather than a continuation. For many fans, this felt like exclusion. The reaction was immediate and intense. Viewership numbers failed to meet expectations, reviews polarized sharply, and the discourse became impossible to control. Then came the unthinkable. Disney canceled the series after just one season. No quiet fade-out, no polite distancing, a clean public cut. In an industry known for protecting its creators, this decision sent shockwaves. It wasn't just about one show failing, it was a signal, a message that even the biggest franchises are vulnerable when audiences disengage. For the first time in years, it felt like the power balance had shifted. The audience wasn't being ignored anymore, it was being feared. Some downfalls happen slowly, others unfold in front of millions. Megan Rapinoe's story became one of the most debated examples of the latter. Known as much for her activism as her athletic skill, she became a polarizing figure long before her final games. Supporters saw courage, critics saw arrogance. That divide followed her onto the field. Then came the moment that changed everything. A missed penalty during a critical match. Simple, sudden, and irreversible. The loss ended the team's run, and with it, much of the narrative surrounding her career. What followed felt almost scripted. In her final appearance, she suffered a severe injury, ending her career not with celebration, but frustration. Her post-match comments only deepened the divide, reigniting controversy instead of closure. For critics, it was proof of poetic justice. For supporters, it was tragedy. Either way, the image was sealed. A career that once symbolized defiance ended in silence and bitterness, not with applause, but with questions. The consequences weren't limited to celebrities. Corporations learned the same lesson at a much higher cost. When Bud Light partnered with a controversial influencer, the backlash was immediate and devastating. Sales plummeted, stock values dropped, billions were wiped out in a matter of weeks. What shocked analysts wasn't the outrage, it was how fast consumers walked away. No long explanations, no negotiations, just refusal. The influencer at the center of the controversy didn't disappear, but the opportunities did. Major brands went silent. Endorsements vanished. The path shifted toward books, smaller platforms, and niche audiences. For corporations, the message was clear. Associating with polarizing figures wasn't brave, it was risky. And risk, when multiplied by global markets, becomes unacceptable. The ripple effects are still being felt. Marketing strategies changed overnight. Caution replaced confidence, and one partnership became a case study taught in boardrooms worldwide. Blake Lively's situation combined everything Hollywood fears into one unraveling story. It began with tone-deaf promotion. A film centered on serious trauma was marketed casually, almost flippantly. Audiences noticed. Then came product launches tied to the press tour, which many saw as opportunistic. Criticism grew. The internet dug deeper, and old interview resurfaced, casting doubt on her carefully curated image. What followed was worse. Reports of conflict with her co-star and director emerged. Accusations flew both ways. Legal claims escalated. Text messages were released, then disputed. Public opinion shifted rapidly and unexpectedly. Instead of automatic support, skepticism took over. Allies stayed quiet. Studios distanced themselves. As the legal battle continues, her public presence has nearly vanished. No statements, no appearances. Just absence. In an industry built on visibility, disappearing is the loudest response of all. When you step back, the pattern becomes impossible to deny. Different industries, different personalities, same outcome. Public hostility toward audiences, followed by commercial decline, retreat, or reinvention. The message isn't about ideology, it's about respect. Audiences don't demand agreement, they demand consideration. The moment fans feel dismissed, they leave. And when they leave quietly, the damage is irreversible. Hollywood is learning this lesson the hard way. Fewer risks, more hesitation, a renewed focus on what people actually want to watch. Whether this change lasts remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. The era of assuming the audience doesn't matter is over, and the consequences of forgetting that are already written all over the industry.